President Obama gave some very long answers at his news conference yesterday on the Iranian nuclear deal. He would go on and on for 10 or 15 minutes on each point, and when he wasn't getting all the questions that he had hoped to, he took out some notes and sort of asked himself the questions. This is a very complicated matter in which Barack Obama knows there's a lot of strong opposition in Congress among some of the public. What's really fascinating about this, when you look at the commentary, is that in the public opinion polls, the question of whether or not you support this nuclear agreement with Tehran is very closely tied to whether you support Barack Obama. So a lot of people, including most of the Republicans, don't trust Iran, obviously, and don't trust Obama, and that can be a deadly combination. Obama making the argument that, just continuing to try to impose sanctions with some of our allies dropping out of those sanctions didn't leave him much choice. Boy, the president really got ticked off at CBS's Major Garrett, who asked a question that a lot of us have been wondering about, which is how could you sign this deal or sign this agreement with the rulers of the theocratic regime in Iran and still leave 4 American hostages there, because that's what they are, hostages, including Washington Post correspondent Jason Rezaian, who's being held on trumped-up spying charges. And President didn't like the way the question was phrased and said that that was nonsense and you know better. Clearly got under his skin. And his answer was basically, if we asked for that, then Iran would ask for additional concessions. I always assumed that there was sort of a quiet arrangement on this, and maybe in a few weeks some of these people would start to be released. It did not sound that way from the president's answer. Now, I have to say that I think the punditry on this has been quite predictable. Liberals certainly saying, we're not sure whether it'll work, but basically defending the president. Conservatives all over him, accusing him of appeasement, naivety, and worse, saying he's now making it easier for Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. Pretty much what the right was saying even before the deal was announced. And so I think what's happening here is there are a lot of other things that conservative critics, beside the details about the inspections and why there has to be a couple of weeks' notice, and all legitimate questions, by the way, the mere fact that the sanctions would be lifted and that Iran would get something like another $150 billion to spend on whatever it wants, including the sponsorship of terrorism, makes this very difficult for a lot of critics to swallow. Now, there's an assumption here inside the Beltway that this will go through, because all the president has to do is get 34 Democratic senators to support him, and he can override any veto. We'll have to see how that plays out. Ironically, in a news conference that went on for more than an hour, was mostly devoted to Iran, where the president really made news was about Bill Cosby. He said that he kind of tried to say no comment, but he said there was no precedent for a Presidential Medal of Freedom, which Cosby received in 2002, to be revoked. But then he was very quick to say that if a man uses drugs to have sex with a woman against her will, that is rape. And I think the president felt the need to separate himself from Bill Cosby after all the evidence that has come out. That debate may be easily resolved now. The one on Iran, not so much.